In May 2016, the body of Aria Smith was discovered floating in the infinity pool of Villa 23 at Bali's exclusive Amara Resort. The investigation into her honeymoon murder would uncover a web of deception spanning years, revealing how far someone would go to create perfect love. In the early hours of June 15, 2019, paradise became a crime scene. Aria Smith had always been drawn to beautiful things. At 27, her eye for discovering hidden gems had made her the youngest curator at Shanghai's prestigious modern art gallery. Her colleagues often joked that she could see beauty where others saw darkness, a talent that had shaped both her career and her heart. Nico Blake was 32 when they met, already a celebrated figure in tech security. His software innovations had made him wealthy, but it was his quiet intensity and gentle manner that had captured Aria's attention that night at her gallery opening. Their whirlwind romance had captivated their social circles, the artistic soul and the logical mind finding perfect balance. The Amara Resort emerged like a dream from Bali's lush landscape as their private car wound up the cliff road. Aria watched Nico's profile as he gazed out at the Indian Ocean stretching endlessly before them. His jaw was relaxed, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth, the same expression he'd worn when he first told her he loved her. Their villa, perched on the cliff's edge, was everything the brochures had promised and more. Nico had arranged every detail meticulously, from the scattered rose petals forming a path to their bedroom to the private chef preparing a special welcome dinner. The staff exchanged knowing smiles as they watched him fuss over every detail, ensuring everything was perfect for his new bride. "The sunset from your infinity pool is quite spectacular, Mr. and Mrs. Blake," their butler mentioned as he wheeled in champagne. Aria noticed how Nico's eyes softened when she was called Mrs. Blake, the way his hand found hers and squeezed gently. As the sun began its descent, they stood together at the pool's edge. Nico pulled her close, his chin resting on her head. "I want to give you everything," he whispered, his voice carrying that same tenderness that had made her fall for him. "A perfect life, a family, all of it." Aria's heart fluttered. The pregnancy test had been burning a hole in her luggage since they left Shanghai. She'd waited for the perfect moment, and this, with the sky painted in golds and purples, the sound of waves below, and Nico's arms around her, felt like destiny. "I'll be right back," she said, kissing his cheek. In the marble bathroom, her hands trembled as she took out the test. 3 minutes later, she stared at the positive result, joy threatening to burst from her chest. Their one night of passion after the engagement, breaking their wait until marriage pact, had led to this perfect moment. She found Nico arranging their dinner on the terrace, candles flickering in the gentle breeze. He looked up with that smile that still made her heart skip, the one that had first caught her attention across that crowded gallery. "Nico," she said softly, holding out the test. "We're going to be parents." The change was subtle but profound. His smile remained, frozen in place, but something died in his eyes. For a long moment, he just stared at the test, unmoving. The air seemed to thicken around them, heavy with unspoken words. Then, with mechanical precision, he set down the plate he was holding. "I need a minute," he said, voice eerily calm. Before she could respond, he had disappeared into the villa, leaving her alone on the terrace with their half-arranged dinner and the cooling evening breeze. Minutes stretched into hours. Aria sat at the terrace table, the untouched food growing cold, her joy curdling into confusion. When she finally heard movement inside, she found the bathroom door locked. Through it, she could hear Nico moving things around, muttering to himself. "Nico," she called softly. "Are you okay? Please talk to me." Only silence answered. The perfect evening had shifted into something else, something wrong. Through the bathroom door, she occasionally heard strange sounds, drawers opening and closing, things being moved, and once, what sounded like quiet, desperate laughter. Around midnight, the resort's security guard passed their villa during his rounds. He would later report hearing what sounded like items being thrown in the bathroom, and a man's voice repeating something he couldn't make out. Aria lay in their honeymoon bed, alone, watching shadows dance across the ceiling as palm trees swayed in the tropical breeze. The pregnancy test sat on the nightstand, its two pink lines now feeling less like joy and more like the first cracks in a perfect facade. In the bathroom, the sounds had stopped, replaced by a silence that felt heavier than any noise. Paradise, she was learning, could become a prison in the space of a single revelation. And as the night deepened around Villa 23, neither Aria nor the resort staff could have known that this was only the beginning, that perfect dreams could shatter like glass, leaving behind edges sharp enough to draw blood. Dawn crept into Villa 23 through gauzy curtains, finding Aria still awake, her mind racing through the events of the previous night. Nico had emerged from the bathroom around 5 a.m., his face ashen, avoiding her eyes as he mechanically changed clothes and announced he was going to the resort gym. Something had shifted in him. The loving husband who couldn't keep his hands off her yesterday now flinched at her touch. When she tried to ask about last night, he merely mumbled later and left, his gym bag clutched like a shield. The silence of the villa pressed against her ears. Moving to their unpacked luggage, Aria began arranging their clothes, trying to restore some normalcy. As she lifted Nico's suitcase to the bed, something rattled inside a hidden compartment she hadn't noticed before. Her fingers trembled as she unzipped it. Inside, she found prescription bottles, several of them. Estradiol, spiralactone, names she didn't recognize. Her heart pounding, she pulled them out one by one, reading labels that bore the name Diana Roberts. A passport fell out next, older, its edges worn. The photo showed someone who looked eerily like Nico, but softer, feminine. The name matched the prescriptions. Beneath the passport lay a stack of photographs, held together with a rubber band. Aria's hands shook as she removed it. The first photo showed a young woman with familiar eyes, Nico's eyes, standing in graduation robes. The next few documented a gradual transformation. Her stomach churned as understanding began to dawn. At the bottom of the compartment, she found medical documents. Gender reassignment surgery. Hormone therapy protocols. Legal name change papers from Diana Roberts to Nicholas Blake. Each page felt like a physical blow. The villa's air conditioning hummed as Aria sat surrounded by the evidence of a life she hadn't known existed. Memories began flooding back, taking on new meaning. How Nico always wore a shirt when swimming. The strange patches she'd noticed on his thighs but never questioned. His reluctance to talk about childhood. The way he'd tensed when she mentioned wanting biological children during their engagement. A small velvet box contained what appeared to be an old engagement ring, delicate, feminine. The inscription read, "To Diana, all my love. Another life. Another love. Another person." Her phone buzzed. A message from Nico, going to have breakfast at Gym Cafe. 4 days into their honeymoon, and he was avoiding her. She remembered his expression last night when she'd announced the pregnancy, the way something had died in his eyes. The truth slammed into her with physical force. A biological impossibility. Her hand flew to her stomach as nausea rose. The pregnancy test still sat on the nightstand, mocking her with its pink lines. She rushed to the bathroom, barely making it before retching. When she emerged, her phone showed another message. Need to make some calls. Back later. The loving husband of yesterday had been replaced by a stranger who could barely look at her. Her world was unraveling, paradise turning toxic. Room service arrived with lunch she hadn't ordered. Compliments of Mr. Blake, the server said, but Nico remained absent. The food grew cold as Aria sat among the scattered evidence of his past, each piece adding to her growing sense of betrayal. By late afternoon, she'd pieced together the timeline. Diana's transition had begun 6 years ago, which meant Nico had known exactly who he was when they met. When he pursued her. When he proposed. When they planned for a family. The sun was setting when she heard his keycard in the door. Aria had packed away the evidence, but left one item on the coffee table, the old passport. Nico froze when he saw it, his face draining of color. Diana, she said softly, the name foreign on her tongue. He flinched as if struck, still not meeting her eyes. I was going to tell you, he whispered. When? Her voice cracked. After I spent years wondering why I couldn't get pregnant? After how many more lies? Nico's shoulders hunched. I'll sleep on the couch, was all he said, grabbing a pillow from their bed. That night, the sound of waves felt less like paradise and more like a reminder of how quickly foundations could be washed away. In the darkness, Aria heard Nico's quiet sobs from the living room, but they brought no sympathy. Her own tears were for a different reason, for the life she thought she had, for the future she'd imagined, for the trust that lay shattered like glass across their perfect paradise. Neither of them could have known that this was just the beginning, that betrayal could breed darker things, and that paradise could become a perfect place to hide terrible truth. By the third morning in paradise, an uneasy routine had developed. Nico spent hours at the resort gym, returning only to shower and change clothes. When present, he moved through their villa like a ghost, speaking in whispers, his eyes constantly tracking Aria's movements with a mixture of love and fear that made her skin crawl. The once affectionate touches had been replaced by careful distance, as if they were both afraid of what contact might reveal. It happened while he was in the shower. His laptop chimed with an email notification. Aria hadn't planned to look, but the sender's name caught her eye. Gender Affirmation Support Group. Her fingers moved before she could stop herself, clicking through to his email folders. But it was another folder on the desktop that made her blood freeze. AC Project. Her initials. The first photo appeared, and Aria felt the air leave her lungs. There she was, leaving her gallery 2 years ago, completely unaware of being photographed. Another showed her having coffee at her favorite cafe, head bent over paperwork. Shopping at markets. Walking her friend's dog in the park. Every image dated months before their supposed chance meeting at her exhibition. Each photo a testament to a deception she hadn't known existed. A document titled Operation Gallery laid bare the truth of their first meeting. That magical moment, when he'd bumped into her by the contemporary sculpture section, had been orchestrated down to the minute. He'd studied which pieces to bid on, memorized her curatorial notes to sound knowledgeable, planned exactly how to accidentally spill his drink near her. The foundation of their love story was built on careful calculation. Spreadsheets detailed her daily routines with frightening precision. Her favorite coffee shops, running routes, the galleries she frequented. Notes analyzed her social media presence, documenting everything from her artistic preferences to her dreams of family life. The level of detail made her stomach churn. He'd known everything about her before speaking a single word. Yet as she dug deeper, something shifted in the documentation. The clinical observations began to carry traces of genuine emotion. Surveillance photos gave way to candid shots that lingered on her smile, her laugh, moments of kindness she showed to others. The calculated pursuit had somehow transformed into real affection, but the deception remained at its core. In the bathroom, the shower stopped running. Aria quickly closed the laptop, her mind reeling from what she'd discovered. When Nico emerged, their eyes met briefly before he looked away. She saw it now, the war behind his eyes. Love fighting with fear, devotion battling guilt. He was a man trapped between the lies that had started his pursuit and the genuine feelings that had grown from it. The silence in the villa grew heavier with each passing hour. Nico moved around their space like a man underwater, his movements slow and hesitant. When he spoke, his voice carried that familiar tenderness that she now realized had become real somewhere along the way, but it was tainted by the knowledge of its origins. Paradise continued outside their villa. Waves crashed, birds sang, other honeymooners laughed by the pool. But inside Villa 23, something dark was taking root. Every glance between them carried new weight. Every movement felt calculated. The trust they'd built was dissolving like sugar in rain, leaving behind only the bitter taste of deception. By evening, the full impact of her discovery had settled into Aria's bones. Every moment of their relationship now needed to be re-examined. The romantic gestures, the thoughtful gifts, the deep conversations, how much had been real, and how much had been carefully choreographed steps in his AC project. Nico's own torment was visible in his hunched shoulders, in the way his hands shook slightly as he poured water, in his aborted attempts to reach for her before pulling back. His love had become real, but it was built on a foundation of lies. Now, as their world unraveled, he seemed lost between his genuine feelings and the weight of his deception. The night settled around them like a shroud. Nico retreated to his makeshift bed on the couch, his laptop now clutched protectively to his chest. In the bedroom, Aria lay awake, terror blooming in her chest. If he had watched her for so long, planned everything so carefully, what else was he capable of? What would happen now that his perfect plan had crumbled? The sound of waves against the cliffs below their villa no longer soothed. Instead, they reminded her of how quickly foundations could be eroded, how easily paradise could become a prison. The man she'd married was both real and artificial, a genuine love grown from seeds of deception. And somewhere in that contradiction, a darkness was growing, fed by their mutual sense of betrayal. Paradise, she was learning, could be the perfect cover for obsession. And sometimes, the most dangerous love was the kind that started as a project but grew into an addiction. The fourth morning in paradise brought storm clouds on the horizon. Nico no longer bothered with pretense of going to the gym. He sat in the villa's living room, laptop open, his eyes constantly darting between the screen and Aria's movements. The tender husband had vanished, replaced by someone whose love had twisted into something possessive and dark. Every few minutes, his gaze would drift to her abdomen, a mix of betrayal and rage flickering across his features. The pregnancy test still lay on the bathroom counter, a constant reminder of what he saw as her ultimate deception. His hands would shake slightly whenever he passed it, as if the very sight physically affected him. "Who could it be?" he muttered repeatedly, mostly to himself. "All that time I watched you, protected you, loved you. Who did you let in?" His voice carried a dangerous edge that made Aria's skin crawl. The surveillance she discovered now felt less like obsession and more like ownership. When Aria's phone chimed with a message, his head snapped up. "Who's that?" His voice was too calm, too controlled. She noticed how his fingers tightened on the laptop's edge, white-knuckled. The villa had become a carefully monitored cage. Nico had changed the Wi-Fi password, claiming resort security concerns. The room service staff now needed his approval before entering. Even their balcony doors remained locked, the key mysteriously missing. "You don't understand," Aria tried explaining again, her voice raw from repeated attempts. "I haven't been with anyone else. The test must be wrong." But each denial seemed to feed his paranoia. The man who had meticulously planned their entire relationship now couldn't handle an element he hadn't calculated for. When she tried calling her gallery in Shanghai, Nico appeared beside her, hovering, listening to every word. Her answers became mechanical under his surveillance. Yes, the honeymoon was fine. Yes, they were enjoying paradise. The lies tasted like ashes in her mouth. "You destroyed everything," he accused later, pacing the villa like a caged animal. "I planned it all perfectly. Years of waiting, watching, making sure everything would be right. And you." His voice broke. "You ruined it with one betrayal." The irony of his accusation hit Aria like a physical blow. Betrayal. Her laugh was hollow. "You stalked me for years. You orchestrated our entire relationship. Every moment we shared was based on your calculations. And you dare talk about betrayal." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating his face. The face she'd fallen in love with, now twisted with obsession and pain. "I did it all for us," he whispered. "Every plan, every detail. It was to make us perfect. But you're like all the others. You'll leave. They always leave." The storm grew closer, pressure dropping as thunder rolled across the water. Inside the villa, a different kind of storm was building. Nico's pacing became more erratic, his mumbled declarations of love mixing with accusations of betrayal. Each crack of lightning revealed new shadows in his eyes. When Aria managed to slip a note to housekeeping, Nico intercepted it before the door closed. His hands shook as he read her plea for help. "You're trying to ruin everything," he whispered, tears mixing with rage. "After everything I did to make us perfect." The afternoon brought the first attempts of rain. Aria suggested a walk on the beach, desperate to escape the villa's suffocating atmosphere. Nico agreed too quickly, his hand gripping her arm as they descended to the shore. What once would have felt protective now felt like shackles. A failed attempt to reach the resort's front desk left her with a sprained wrist, Nico's grip stronger than expected. "I'm protecting us," he kept saying, but his gentle tone couldn't mask the threat beneath. His love had become a prison, his obsession its walls. Night fell, bringing with it a suffocating darkness. Sleep became impossible under his constant vigilance. Even in darkness, she felt his eyes on her, heard his quiet movements around the villa. The laptop stayed open, its screen casting blue shadows across his increasingly gaunt face. Aria sat on their bed, watching paradise disappear beneath the approaching tempest. The waves crashed harder against the cliffs below, their rhythm matching her heartbeat. She understood now. She wasn't just trapped in the villa. She was trapped in the web of an obsession that had begun long before she'd known Nico existed. The storm was coming, both outside and within Villa 23. Nico's careful control was beginning to crack like the lightning outside. His love had become a twisted thing, fed by years of surveillance and secrets. Now, with both their masks stripped away, something dangerous was building in paradise. And Aria knew, with growing certainty, that not everyone would survive its passing. Lightning split the sky above Villa 23, illuminating the infinity pool where ripples distorted the reflection of the gathering storm. Inside, Aria stood in the bedroom doorway, watching Nico hunched over his laptop, muttering as he scrolled through years of surveillance photos. His fingers trembled as he traced her image on the screen. The medical report lay open on the coffee table, resort doctors' findings about hormone contamination causing false pregnancy readings. The truth had pushed him over an edge from which there was no return. The perfect plan, the years of preparation, all unraveled by a simple chemical reaction to his own medications. It was all perfect, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the growing storm. I chose you. I watched you. I became everything you could want. His laugh was hollow, edged with hysteria. But you're leaving. Like Diana left. Like everyone leaves. Thunder crashed as Aria took a step back. The movement caught his attention, his head snapping up with predatory sharpness. You can't leave, he said, rising slowly. I won't let them take you from me. Not after everything I've done. Rain lashed against the windows as Nico advanced. Gone was any trace of the gentle man she'd married. In his eyes, she saw something feral, something broken. His hands clenched and unclenched rhythmically. You don't understand, he continued, moving closer. I had to become perfect for you. Diana had to die so Nico could be what you needed. Every detail, every moment. I orchestrated everything. His voice cracked. The gallery, the coffee shops, the proposals, all perfect. But you ruined it with your lies. I never lied, Aria's voice trembled. The pregnancy test, it was your medications. You're the one who built our entire relationship on lies. Lightning illuminated his face, tears streaming down hollow cheeks. Lies, he screamed. I became what you needed. Every moment was real. Every touch, every kiss. He lunged forward suddenly, grabbing her arms. Tell me it wasn't real. Tell me you didn't feel it. Aria twisted away, bolting for the terrace door. The key she'd stolen from his laptop bag earlier felt heavy in her pocket. Behind her, she heard him coming, his breathing ragged. The storm raged as she burst onto the terrace, rain instantly soaking her. The infinity pool's edge blurred into the darkness beyond, waves crashing against the cliffs below. Nico's figure appeared in the doorway, silhouetted by lightning. You can't leave me, he pleaded, advancing. I won't be Diana again. I won't be alone. I won't let you destroy everything I built. The struggle was brief but violent. His hands found her throat as she fought back. They grappled near the pool's edge, feet slipping on wet tiles. In the chaos, Aria saw the laptop still clutched in his other hand, his precious evidence, his years of surveillance. A final lightning strike illuminated everything in stark detail. Nico's contorted face, the rain falling like shattered glass, the infinite drop beyond the pool's edge. Then darkness swallowed them both. Dawn crept over the Amara Resort, painting Villa 23 in shades of gold that did nothing to soften the horror within. The infinity pool's usually crystal water had taken on a pinkish tinge, rippling gently around Aria's body. She floated face down, her white nightgown billowing around her like a ghost in the morning light. Detective Aria Smith surveyed the scene as forensics photographed every detail. Scattered across the wet tiles, hundreds of surveillance photos told a story of obsession. Each image showed Aria, candid shots spanning years, their edges now bleeding with rain and blood. The laptop lay shattered near the pool's edge, its contents spilled like digital entrails across the terrace. Body temperature suggests time of death between 2 and 3 a.m., the medical examiner reported. Initial signs point to strangulation followed by drowning. Defensive wounds on her arms and neck. She fought back. By noon, evidence markers dotted a scene of calculated madness. Inside the villa, overturned furniture and broken glass painted a picture of Aria's final struggle. A trail of water and blood led from the terrace to the bedroom. Medical reports lay scattered, hormone therapy protocols, transition documentation, psychological evaluations. A pregnancy test sat on the bathroom counter, its positive indicator now a cruel chemical coincidence. "We found him at Denpasar International Airport," Officer Wong reported at 2 p.m. "Trying to board a flight to Bangkok. Had scratches on his face, bruising on his hands. Her blood on his clothes. When they brought Nico in, he was a different man from the wedding photos taken just days ago. His eyes were hollow, clothes soaked with pool water and something darker. In interrogation, he alternated between complete silence and manic declarations of love. 'I made everything perfect,' he kept repeating. 'I became perfect for her.' The investigation revealed a pattern stretching back years. Tech specialists recovered files from the damaged laptop, folders labeled meticulously by initials and dates. AC project contained thousands of photos, detailed schedule tracking, social media analyses. But 3 other folders held similar patterns for different women. He was stalking others before Aria, Smith's partner explained. Each case spans about 2 years, all ending abruptly. The last one stopped just before he began monitoring Aria. Resort security footage filled in the final days. Cameras captured Nico's increasing instability, monitoring Aria's movements, preventing her from leaving the villa, his gradual psychological unraveling. The doctor who had examined Aria 2 days prior confirmed the false pregnancy, hormone contamination from prolonged exposure to Nico's medications in their shared food and drinks. In their Shanghai apartment, police found a hidden room dedicated to surveillance. Walls covered with photos of Aria, detailed maps marking her regular routes, schedules spanning years. Among the evidence, they discovered files on the other women he'd stalked, all fitting a similar profile, all art curators or gallery owners. It wasn't just stalking, Smith concluded. He was recreating himself for each target, learning their preferences, becoming their perfect match. But Aria was different. With her, the obsession became complete. The hotel staff interviews painted the final picture. The butler recalled their arrival, the perfect couple. Housekeeping noted growing tension, mentioned hearing arguments. A security guard reported seeing Aria trying to leave the evening before her death, Nico dragging her back inside. The medical examiner's final report confirmed what the scene suggested. Strangulation marks on Aria's neck. Water in her lungs. Defensive wounds showing she fought desperately for life. Under her fingernails, they found Nico's skin and DNA, matching the scratches on his face when arrested. Most chilling were Nico's journals, found in a false bottom of his suitcase. The writing evolved from calculated planning to desperate obsession. The final entry, written hours before Aria's death, read, "She can't leave. I won't be Diana again. Perfect love requires perfect sacrifice." Paradise had become evidence. Villa 23 was sealed, its infinity pool drained, its perfect views now witness to obsession's darkest outcome. The investigation would reveal more victims, more planned targets, a pattern of perfection pursued at any cost. As Smith filed her final report, she knew this case would haunt the resort's corridors. A reminder that Paradise's greatest danger lay not in what it revealed, but in what it could hide, behind perfect smiles, perfect plans, and the desperate pursuit of perfect love. Nico Blake would be charged with first-degree murder, his elaborate stalking network exposed. But for Detective Smith, the real horror lay in the ordinary details, the shared meals, the morning coffees, each one laced with medications that would ultimately help trigger the facade's collapse. Paradise, she learned, was the perfect place to hide monsters, especially those who learned to wear the mask of love.